Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. And in this video, what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of revisit mental health in terms of like some tips and some advice on how to claim it as a secondary condition. Because I've been getting a lot of questions about this, so I thought I'd just kind of talk about it. This is the second time I've recorded this just because the first time uh, I started talking about other conditions in it, and it wasn't straight off the path. So I'm gonna have to, stay focused on this. Now, if you like the content, you like videos like this coming from me, then please like and subscribe the videos. Tick that notification bell, do all the YouTubey things, and also, I guess if you wanted, you could hype the video if that's a thing, if that's an option that you have. I keep hearing people talk about hype, and I mean, I'm down for hype, but now let's get into this. Now, this is going to be just some tips on, it's not going to be manual intensive. This is going to be just some tips. So, um, the first thing is, and then now this can be generalized to every single claim. Okay, not just mental health, but this can be generalized to every single claim. The duty to assist is what a lot of veterans understand that, hey, look, if I claim it direct, and let's say that my condition could also be, like let's say that I claim it for direct, you guys send me to an exam, the examiner says no, it's not direct. The VA is obligated to also review all the different theories for service connection that technically could apply. So like let's say you have a positive Terra memorandum. Well, if you go for an examination and the examiner says no to direct, what should happen is the rater should defer it back and ask to have the examiner do an ACE exam and review whether or not Terra theory for service connection is the cause of your condition. Well, the problem with secondary is it doesn't behave like that. So every other theory for service connection behaves like that, to where it's the obligation of the rater to do the duty to assist to get those medical opinions before they finalize the examination. Secondary is different. And the reason why secondary is different is because there's only two ways that we can raise the secondary theory to issue. The first way is that you explicitly claim it like that. So you claim, I have depression secondary to chronic pain caused by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's the first way. If you explicitly claim it as secondary, it has to be done. We have to get you an exam with a secondary medical opinion. Now, the second way that it can happen is implicitly. What happens is, let's say that you claim mental health directly, and the examiner says no in their medical opinion. No, it's not direct. However, they give you a little bit more for your money, and they say, well, it's actually most likely due, their depression is actually most likely due to their chronic pain caused by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when we have that, that's whenever we can raise secondary to issue when it was never explicitly claimed by you. But those are the only two instances. Okay. So there's a lot of misconception about secondary. Like, hey, you should have ran this down. You should have checked my medications. Technically not required to do that. Because if if the raters tried to do that, then they'd be there forever. I mean, I've had instances where I've had people claim the weirdest things as secondary directly, and like they claimed it due to every single medication separately, and it annoyed me. Just because I had to give an answer to that, combine it all. And that's going to lead us into the next thing here. Claiming, well, maybe not. I'll finish this thought. So the thing that you need to understand is that explicitly claiming secondary doesn't mean that we'll include your medications. Okay. So you have to be very clear in how you explicitly claim that it is secondary. Like it is secondary due to chronic pain from, you know, XYZ ABC and medications from ABCDEFG. Okay. If you don't do that, if you don't explicitly claim it like that, then the examiner would have to implicitly report it. You know, like they'd have to report that I think it's due to the sumatriptan, you know, from this or whatever medication. The examiner would have to report it in order for the rater to chase after it. The rater will not chase after that medical opinion unless you either explicitly claim it or it's, you know, brought up by the examiner in a different medical opinion. Now, claiming multiple primary conditions is tricky. And I use the word tricky there, but it's dangerous. So, what do I mean by primary condition? Service connected conditions. So, in order to have mental health secondary to something, you have to have something that's service connected. Okay, now what I'm talking about here is the normal secondary theory of service connection, that you have a primary condition and you have the secondary claimed condition, the condition that was made, you know, caused by the primary service connected condition. One of the most common ones that I see is depression and or anxiety due to chronic pain caused by service connected ABCDEFG. Now, that is you're claiming mental health due to one condition, and that's chronic pain caused by multiple conditions. That's something completely different here. So those are two different things. So if you claim chronic pain as the I'm claiming, you know, depression due to chronic pain caused by my back, my knees, my hips, my feet, and all of those are service connected. You're technically only claiming it due to one thing, and that's chronic pain caused by the multiple things. That's fine. An examiner can wrap their head around that. An examiner can take all of those conditions and go, okay, do each of these cause pain? Okay, they do. Okay, great. That makes sense. That is a logical and linear deduction that I have all these things that cause a lot of chronic pain. They never get better. Chronic pain itself is what you know makes me depressed, anxious, whatever. That's fine. The thing that I'm talking about right here is something to where it's like I think that my depression is due to my asthma, my gallbladder, my migraines, my feet, whatever. And you never qualify what those things have in common with each other. Okay. You're just giving the examiner 5 different things that could cause the, you know, the mental health, the depression or anxiety. Now, I've talked about this in some other videos, and a lot of you have disagreed with me on this. But it is hard for an examiner if you give them 5 different things, and I'm just picking an arbitrary number here, 5 different things that could be causing your depression, anxiety, mental health, whatever, it becomes 5 times as hard to determine whether or not it's at least as likely as not that one of them caused it. And that's the difference between chronic pain. Chronic pain is the culmination of 5, you know, like let's say 5, let me do this example, but my back, my feet, my gallbladder caused me chronic pain. Chronic pain is the culmination of all of those conditions into one single topic that the examiner can review versus claiming multiple things that have nothing in common with each other. You don't state what's in common with them. You just claim it. It could be due to this. It could be those medications. It could be that thing. That detracts from your argument because you're just giving them 5 different ways to say no, right? I have no clue. It could be due to so many things that it would fall to the realm of mere speculation. That's the fear with claiming multiple primary conditions that have nothing in common with each other is that you make it to where the examiner can't be certain enough to get to that 50, I want to say 51%, it's always my thing, but to a degree of certainty that they're willing to put their credentials on the line for it. And That's why I always say go for the 51% is because you want them to be certain of it. Because if they're not certain, then the examiner will not provide a sufficient rationale for their medical opinion that will pass the rater's uh, criteria for reviewing to determine whether or not the medical opinion is sufficient. So I just say that if you're going to claim multiple primary conditions, I wouldn't, unless you can link them all into one single thing that makes it easier for the examiner to go, okay, that makes sense. Oh wow, those five things being linked under one commonality is that's more exponentially worse than if they just claimed one thing. Wow, that makes sense. Versus, yeah, I think it's due to my eyeball, my foot, toe fungus, my knee, and alopecia. I Sure. And this just comes like this is not a hard fast rule. This just comes from my experience and seeing the examiners not want to put their neck out there. Examiners will not go out on a limb for you at all. They tie themselves off to the tree. Like they want to make sure that they're certain that the answer that they're giving is accurate. Okay. So that I know that this one's kind of convoluted, but hopefully I explained it at least somewhat sufficiently. Now, if you're going, this is another thing. I do not recommend that you do this. I recommend that you do one theory at a time. You pick the evidence that is the strongest for whatever theory could apply. Is secondary the strongest theory for mental health for you? Then pick it and stick with it. Don't throw multiple theories into the mix. Is direct the strongest theory? I mean, mental health's a little bit less susceptible to this, but let's say that you are going to cite multiple theories, then you need to cite them all up front. Because if you cite them all up front, the examiner gets all of those theories at the same time. They will then review them equally and rule in, rule out, and see what happened. That's different than the examiner does a review, they're done with it. It gets deferred back for a new medical opinion because they're just trying to track down whatever. Like Tara, it wouldn't be Tara for the mental health, but like let's say you claim secondary as your initial thing, and then they go, okay, well let's talk about direct. There's a psychology to this, okay, in that the examiners can tell when we're just throwing stuff at the wall. We're doing things out of procedure. So when they get a new medical opinion for like direct, after they've already determined that it had nothing to do with secondary, they know it's not that the strongest evidence is not being presented to them. It's just more of a check the box type situation. Because had the examiner had all that information before them at originally, they would have potentially, though they don't do it all the time, they would have said, no, it's due to this. Right? If the evidence was strong enough for them to make that determination, they would have made that determination. So a subsequent deferral to go back and say, oh, well, could you also talk maybe about direct? It has a drastically lower chance of success. So if you are going to do multiple theories up front, like direct and secondary, or aggravation or something like that, you need to, if you want to do that, which I don't recommend you do, cite them all up front because they have a stronger chance of success than, say, us having to defer back and bother the examiner to just kind of rule things out so the rater doesn't get an error. So I don't know. Now, evidence review. Okay. This is one of the sections where I kind of lost it on the last video take on this one. So, what I'm talking about with this is I'm talking about making things make sense in your evidence, right? So, if you are claiming mental health secondary to chronic pain due to your back, right? In order for you to have a successful outcome, then the fact pattern has to say that Your primary condition came before your claimed mental health secondary condition. So, in the evidence, your back had to start hurting you before you were depressed. If your timeline of when things happened, right? Like I, hurt my back in service. I got service connected. I had a back surgery. I was unable to do stuff. It started making me sad. Like I started getting chronic pain. It started making me anxious that I was going to fall down because of my back. Uh, my kids started having to help me pick stuff up off the ground. It made me very depressed. I couldn't work because of my back. I la 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 la. And then I got diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And then I filed a claim. And now you're going to service connect me for major depressive disorder secondary to chronic pain from my back. That has to make sense. Like that example made sense. It's got a timeline to it. The timeline makes sense. Now, if you had depressive symptoms before your back pain ever started, that doesn't make sense for the like general secondary. That would be something else. That would be aggravation of a non-service connected condition, which I will get into in the future under 38 CFR 3.310B. But for the normal A caused B secondary type thing, your timeline has to match up and line up. Okay. This is critical. If this doesn't line up, and there's like, if you were going to do like, I'm going to do a weird one here, but like let's say that you got all these physical injuries and it's not chronic pain. Let's say you gained a whole bunch of weight and it made you depressed, right? If you gained the weight before the injuries happened, that your timeline will fall apart under evidentiary review by the examiner. So timelines are important. I didn't stress this on my last one, but you need to review your evidence. Now, secondaries deal in the here and now. They're post-service service connections, right? They happen after service. You have access to all these records. So there's no like I get the whole direct issue where it's like, hey, look, I don't have my STRs, all this other stuff. That's not true for this. For secondaries, you have access to all this evidence. You should be looking at it before you decide how you want to claim something. You should be looking at your evidence and you should be determining, when did my mental health first manifest? When did, like, is it due to my secondary? Well, it seems like it. Or is it due to my primary? Seems like it. Okay, when was I first diagnosed with that? When did I have symptoms? When did this? Start making sure that your timeline matches up. This is critical. If your timeline doesn't match up, the examiner will not say yes. The rater will figure it out too. And they'll send it back. Even if it's granted and your timeline doesn't make sense, they'll be like, well, wait a minute. He had reports of depression 6 months before he ever injured his back. So how is that feasible? It's not the rater being a jerk. It's the fact that the evidence doesn't make sense. Legally, it doesn't line up. So now we're going to go into submitting evidence. So this is a tip for this. Now, I'm going to tell you, you need to highlight your timeline. I'll give you an example of mine, and I'll keep it in the mental health one because this is another place where I just kind of went crazy and took it off topic in the prior recording of this. So I had injured my shoulder on active duty, and I got service connected for my shoulder. And I kept having chronic pain with it, and it kept interfering with my ability to actually do my job in the radiology genre. So, because of that, I had to retrain into a different job through vocational rehabilitation. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I loved being a radiology tech. I did. Loved it more than anything else on the planet. It was the best job for me. I loved it. I was helping out people. I was medical. Loved it. But it wore on me that I couldn't there was one instance where, and this is in my records and stuff where I complained about it in my treatment records, that I was always worried because of my shoulder that I couldn't do chest compressions, right? That I wouldn't be able to help somebody in need if they coded in front of me. And it bothered me, worried me. And so I've got this timeline where I got the, injury in service, I got the chronic pain, I've got, where I could no longer do my job anymore, which started to wear on me. Started getting a little depressed about that. Um, sense of worth, sense of whatever, training into a different job, which didn't help my self esteem any because I love the job that I used to have. I just wish I didn't have the disability, right? Um, and then my depression started getting worse and worse. And then anxiety started, kicking in. And so I can show that timeline. So I printed out all my information, all my chart notes that kind of showed causal relationships between it, how I reported it to my, clinicians and whatnot. That, hey, look, I'm starting to feel like a little down. I'm starting to like, I don't know. I know that this is not the end of the world, but it feels like it is. I feel like, I feel like I'm letting people down because I don't tough through it, type thing. But anyway, so I submitted all of that with my claim, directly with my claim, and I highlighted the information that I wanted them to see, that I wanted the examiner to see, because I had thousands of pages of medical treatment, right? Thousands of pages. And the examiner, I always worried that they weren't going to take the time to look through it, that they weren't going to take the time. I wanted to give them a brief summary of what happened, not my thoughts on it, right? Like not my buddy statement, not my lay statement, but the actual evidence in chronological order. So that way they can see the dates and times of when it happened, my complaints, how it grew, how it escalated. And I was granted for that. Now, can you generalize my experience to you? No. But highlighting the evidence, printing it out and submitting it with your claim gives you a higher probability of the examiner being able to see kind of a general gist of what you want them to see. Hey, look, this caused that, evidenced by this, that, and that, that, and that. Because I don't trust the VSRs to submit this stuff. It's a hot mess right now. And I'm not being mean towards VSRs. I'm just saying, like, sometimes they don't get the exam request right. They don't give all the evidence to the examiner. So I want to package it to where they only have to send one thing that I have summarized for them. And if the examiner wants to run that down, Godspeed, you know. But that way the VSR only has to do one thing. Oftentimes what you'll see, and this is kind of an aside here, but oftentimes what you'll see is the VSRs won't send all the records. If they find one instance of something in there, they'll send one VA medical record. It'll be a big record, but it might not be all the records. Like if you've had multiple VA facilities that you've went to, sometimes they will not send all the VA facilities as evidence to your examiner. They'll send the most recent one. So it's just one of those things that I caution people about. This is meant to increase the likelihood that the evidence gets before the examiner, so that way your evidence can actually be reviewed. Now, I also suggest providing objective examples of your symptoms for mental health secondary to other things. What do I mean by this? Being arrested, fired from your job, family issues, like if these are not part of the normal rating criteria for it. But if you are asking, and I always suggest this, and I might even do the banner on this one, this is very important. If you have something like this right here, okay, that happened to you, request based upon this. Hey, rater, I would like for you to take into consideration my divorce that happened after, due to my service connected, or due to my mental health that I am attributing to service, whatever. And my mental health, this is something that happened. We got a divorce and it has drastically changed my life horribly. Please do a manual upgrade. I request humbly that you do a manual upgrade me to the next higher level based upon these non-compensable circumstances of being arrested or fired due to my service connected, or due to my mental health itself. It has a chance of working, so just keep that in mind. Now, finally, provide lay or buddy statements showing the timeline. So, what can happen, and I'll go back to this other one, I'll just use this line right here, is you'll have this timeline and you'll have a huge gap, right? This is where I would use family members, people that know you, that can attest to your symptoms, and just give that chronological order in addition to your evidence. We want everything to be kind of dress right dress. And as long as their evidence supports your objective evidence, their subjective evidence supports your objective evidence, then it helps the examiner to get to that, and I'm going to say it, 51% degree of certainty, to where they're like, oh, yeah, this is, yeah, I think this is the cause. Um, and that's what you want to do. Obviously it has to be true, right? Like everything has to be true. But this is how I would format and I would submit these with your claim. Now, another tip on submitting evidence, everything has to be submitted the same day as your claim. Okay. If you trickle, I call it trickling, if you trickle evidence in throughout your claim, number one, you're the person I dislike the most, because it makes it to where your claim will never get rated. I mean, we just keep having to send it back and go, okay, and he sent in this. What about this? Still no? Okay, got it. Cool. And I get that people do it out of fear, but don't do that, because you want to have a fully developed claim when you submit. Okay. All the evidence up front, full send me to the exam. You do not want to trickle in evidence. So submit all this stuff at the same time. Now, I get it. Hey, look, I've got an intent to file that's going to burn out soon. I need to get this claim in. Fair enough. But just understand, if all of your evidence is not submitted with your claim, then your claim is not fully developed. And the VSR will not wait to get you an exam. They will not wait at all. It's just, they're going to do it. It's a knee jerk reaction for them. They're going to get them points, right? They're going to get those exam points, and you're not going to get in their way. And after your exam, typically something that could have been probative to the examiner, right? Something that proves or disproves a matter at issue might not be viewed as such by the rater. So when the rater gets it, they go, oh, okay, well, they also send in this, lay or buddy statement, but you know what? They denied it. I don't think it's going to cause any difference, because they denied it for this reason. But it doesn't matter, because it was never put before the examiner. The rater doesn't have the same opinion on it. Do they have to send it back? No. I mean, depending on what the medical opinion is for your denial, they wouldn't have to send it back if it doesn't prove, in the rater's eyes, doesn't prove or disprove the reason why the examiner said no. So just keep that in mind. So submitting all of this stuff at the same time is the standard, guys. You have to do it. Fully developed claim. But that's about all I got for you on this one. These are just some tips and tricks for, claiming mental health secondary to anything. I think if you were going to really fixate on stuff, uh, fixate on the timeline and organizing your evidence. Now, I'm going to be doing more videos on how to organize your evidence, what that looks like, all that kind of stuff. But this is one where I'm getting questions, comments about this secondary, and I just wanted to do a deeper dive into it. This is going to be the only video I put out today, just because I've kind of saturated it and nobody's watching my videos. So, because I put out too many. So, they just get tired of it. But yeah, so that's about all I got for you today. Raider out.